So last year we got the Beats Solo Pro, and I really thought the Beats Studio Pro were right around the corner. But it's been a little over a year now, and we've got the AirPod Max, but still no Beats Studio Pro. Now, even though the AirPod Max really do deliver when it comes to sound and active noise cancellation, I still think the Beats Studio Pro are coming. Now, one of the main reasons why I think we'll still see the Studio Pros is just pricing. The Beats Solo Pro retail for $300, whereas the AirPod Max retail for $550. Now, say what you will about Apple's pricing here, there's a very large price gap between the Solo Pros and the AirPod Max. Now, the Studio 3s retail for $350, and ideally, I would like to think that the Beats Studio Pros would also retail for $350, but just given Apple's courage, I wouldn't be surprised if they retailed for $400. But nonetheless, I do think Apple would like to have a product that is sandwiched between the Beats Solo Pros and the AirPod Max. Now, what do I think we can expect to see from the Beats Studio Pros? Well, for starters, I would expect the Studio Pros to follow the Solo Pros design language. Now, even though the Solo Pros aren't the best built headphones, objectively, they do have better build quality than the previous Beats Solo 3s, and I do think they're better built than the Studio 3s as well. Now, one of the main differentiating factors between the Solos and Studios have been their earpads. The Solos are on-ear headphones, which for a lot of people could be a deal breaker, whereas the Studios are technically over-ear headphones, but the Studio 3's earpads are very cramped when compared to either the Sony 1000 XM4s, Bose NC700s, or AirPod Max. So they still basically fit like a pair of on-ear headphones. So definitely something that I would like to see from the Beats Studio Pros are just more spacious earpads. But now I want to talk about the carrying cases here. Now, Apple has been progressively cheaping out on their carrying cases. Now, the Studio 3s come included with this hard case, but since these headphones don't fold flat, it is rather bulky when compared to these other cases that you get with the Sony 1000 XM4s, Bose NC700s, or Sennheiser PXE552s. Now, when compared to these other cases, this case does feel rather cheap. Now, yeah, it does have a soft touch feel to it, but that's really the only nice thing to say about it. But when it comes to the Studio Pros, I don't know what kind of case to expect. Now, we could get a hard shell case, or we can get a soft shell case like we do with the Beats Solo Pros. Or maybe we'll get some kind of smart bra like we do with the AirPod Max. Now, when it comes to tech specs, it's a safe bet that the Studio Pros are going to use a Lightning port for charging, just like the Beats Solo Pros and AirPod Max. Now, I do think the Studio 3 should have used a Lightning port from the get-go, because when these headphones were announced, they were announced alongside the AirPods and Beats X, which both use a Lightning port for charging. But instead, the Studio 3s are using a micro USB port, which is an inconvenience now. Whereas the majority of ANC headphones these days now charge via a USB-C port. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, the Beats Studio 3s are using Apple's W1 chip, which debuted on the original AirPods. Now, the W1 chip in the Beats Studio 3s makes it super easy to pair these headphones up to your iPhone, and it also allows you to easily hot swap between any of your Apple devices associated to your iCloud account, just like the H1 chip found on the Beats Solo Pros, the second generation AirPods, AirPods Pro, and AirPod Max. But the main difference between the older W1 chip and the newer H1 chip is that the newer H1 chip allows for Hey Siri support. So you could just be like, hey Siri, call so-and-so, or send so-and-so a text, and boom, it's just done with just your voice. Whereas with the Beats Studio 3s, you're gonna have to press and hold on their touchpad like a barbarian. Now, another barbarian thing about the Beats Studio 3s is that they're still using an audio jack, whereas the Beats Solo Pros and AirPod Max have both done away with them. Now, obviously, I'm joking here. I don't want to see the audio jack go away just yet, because you are still going to need to use a wired connection in certain situations. Now, you can still use a wired connection with both the Beats Solo Pros and AirPod Max, but you are going to have to get Apple's Lightning to audio jack cable, which is sold separately for $35. Now, I'm not upset at the fact that Apple's newer headphones don't have an audio jack. I just don't like that their audio cable is sold separately, because if you're a content creator working on a project in Final Cut Pro, you're still going to want to use a wired connection. Because even though Apple's newer headphones do have a very little latency, there is still like a quarter second delay. And even if you're just an average user, you still might want to use a wired connection with your headphones for, like, let's say, for example, plugging your headphones in into an airplane's entertainment system. Now, when it comes to sound, I would expect it to be better on the Beats Studio Pro. Now, I wouldn't expect the Beats Studio Pros to sound as good as the AirPod Max, but I would expect them to sound very similar to the Solo Pros, which do sound better than the Studio 3s. Now, the Studio 3s have your classic Beats sound signature, which has hard-hitting bass, so they are going to rattle your head a good amount, but they also have very strong vocals. So the vocals on these headphones can get all up in your face. So all in all, these are a pair of very narrow sounding headphones because the instrumentals on these headphones can easily get overpowered either by their bass or vocals. Whereas with the Beats Solo Pro, their bass doesn't hit as hard, but it does resonate a good amount. Their vocals also aren't all up in your face, so the instrumentals do have room to shine here. So overall, the Solo Pros do sound more balanced than the Studio 3s, and they also sound a little more open. But like I mentioned earlier, I would not expect the Studio Pros to sound as good as the AirPod Max. Now, like I mentioned in past videos, I like how these headphones sound. They sound much more open than the Solo Pros, and they also have dynamic bass that allows you to physically feel your music, but it doesn't get overpowering like the bass on the Studio 3s. My only complaint about the AirPod Max is that their treble is just a little too high, but overall, I would expect the Beats Studio Pros to sound like the Solo Pros, but they could have a little more physicality to their bass to satiate people who really like bass in their music. I even think they might have a little more bass than the AirPod Max as well, but just not sound as open. But now we've got to talk about the active noise cancellation on the Studio 3s. This is something that really needs work. Plainly said, the active noise cancellation on the Studio 3s is a joke in 2021. A pair of entry-level 2020 ANC headphones like either the Sony Watcha 710N or the Skull Candy Hash ANC easily outperform the Beats Studio 3s. And I would expect the Beats Studio Pros to have decent active noise cancellation because the Solo Pros have so-so active noise cancellation. And the ANC on the AirPod Max is rather impressive because they brutally go after constant low frequency sounds. But so that you can see for yourself, we're going to jump into an ANC test. So, like you may have just seen, the Beats Studio 3s barely block out any noise, whereas the AirPod Max just utterly block out those constant low frequency sounds. And like I mentioned in the full review, the AirPod Max block out more noise than both the Sony 1000 XM4s and Bose NC700s, but their drawback is their cabin pressure. Now, you're not going to feel too much cabin pressure if you're playing music with these headphones, but you might feel like you gotta pop your ears. But you are going to notice that cabin pressure if you're watching a movie or video with these headphones, and you're really going to feel that cabin pressure if you're not playing anything. Now, the Beats Solo Pros also have a noticeable amount of cabin pressure. But overall, I do think that if we get the Beats Studio Pro, their ANC will split the difference between the Solo Pro and AirPod Max. They could block out an impressive amount of noise, but just not block out as much noise as the Bose and Sony's, purely because Apple might want to keep the AirPod Max with the superior active noise cancellation. But something the Beats Studio 3 is completely lacking is a transparency mode. Now, a transparency mode is a very standard feature these days, and both the AirPods Max and Beats Solo Pro have a good transparency mode that sounds very natural, and they barely pick up any wind noise when walking outdoors. Now, transparency mode is very useful either so that you can stay aware of your surroundings when walking around the city, and it's also very useful for when you're working with your headphones on at home, and you still want to be aware either for when someone is knocking on the door or if someone calls your name. So if you do get a Beats Studio Pro, then a transparency mode is a given. But finally, the last thing the Beats Studio 3s really need improving is their microphone. Now, their microphone isn't the worst, and it could get the job done for like a quick conversation. But the microphone on the Beats Studio 3s doesn't sound as clear as the microphone on the Beats Solo Pro. But the AirPod Max do have the superior microphone here. My voice doesn't just sound super clear. This microphone also does a very impressive job of blocking out constant low frequency sounds, because right now we're running the road noise simulation. And if we were to switch over to my lapel microphone, you're going to clearly hear all of this road noise. But if we were to switch back over to the AirPod Max, this road noise isn't just severely reduced, my voice is still front and center. So with all that being said, this isn't really a review or a comparison. I'm just trying to highlight the current state of the Beats Studio 3s in 2021, and I'm just sharing my thoughts of what we could see from the Beats Studio Pros, which I still believe are on the way. Given that the AirPod Max retail for $550 and the Beats Solo Pro retail for $300, I think Apple will want to place a product that addresses the price gap between the AirPod Max and Beats Solo Pro. Now, with that being said, even though the AirPod Max really do deliver when it comes to sound and active noise cancellation, to me, these headphones just have a lot of quirks to them that just makes it hard to justify dropping $550 on them. Then, there are the Beats Solo Pro, which personally I would not recommend that you pick them up at their $300 retail price. And even when they're on sale for $230, they're still a tough sell. At that price, you can go with the Sony XP900N, Sennheiser PXC552s, or Surface Headphones 2, and get way more bang for your buck. And finally, there are the Beats Studio 3. Under no circumstances would I recommend that you pick these headphones up for $350, which is what they are currently going for on Apple's site. And even if these things were on sale for less than $200, you're still better off going with anything else. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.